Hello everyone and welcome back to another Fly From Home in-depth aircraft review for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and today we've got Just Flight's newly released PA38 Tomahawk. So as you can probably tell, it's quite a long video and we're going to be going into a lot of depth with this aircraft. We're going to be having a look at having a talk about the real aircraft first of all. Then we're going to be looking at the visual model in the hangar here in Microsoft Flight Simulator, both inside and outside, then some of the liveries, and then we're going to take the aircraft on a test flight in control conditions, looking at flight dynamics, performance, general handling including stall and spin characteristics, looking at any features of the aircraft that are worthy of note, and then we're going to be completing a circuit detail before I come to some kind of conclusion, my own personal conclusion as to whether this aircraft is worth picking up for the price it's currently on offer for. There are timestamps in the description below, so please skip ahead to the parts that you're most interested in. Alternatively, please sit down and watch the whole thing. And before we start, could I please ask, if you do enjoy these videos, if you'd like to like, comment and subscribe and do all the fancy YouTube things, ring the bell and who knows what else, because it really does help the channel get visible and more people to find us. So without further ado, let's have a little chat about the real aeroplane, shall we? So the PA38 was Piper's attempt to break into the light, cheap, simple aircraft training market, which was really quite lucrative. But certainly in the US at the time, there are large training schools in the US which fly large fleets of small training aircraft, and indeed there are in Europe and in the UK now as well too. But certainly in the US, really big schools buy a lot of these airplanes up, so they're quite lucrative orders. So it was worth Piper looking into making one of these aircraft and trying to oust the Cessna 150, 152 from its position that it's held pretty much since it was first made as the light ab initio trainer of choice. Now, in order to achieve this, Piper went out and they did something that really aircraft designers probably shouldn't do. They surveyed pilots, specifically flying instructors, and being a flying instructor for 8 years or so now, I can tell you that I know absolutely nothing about how to design an aeroplane, so please do not ask me what kind of features I want on an aeroplane. But Piper made this deadly mistake, and the result is the aeroplane you see in front of you now. So there's a number of features on this little aeroplane which flying instructors asked for. Most notably is the flight characteristics of the plane. They wanted something that would stall and spin in a manner which would allow the correct spin recovery technique to be taught during training. Now what this resulted in was quite an unstable aeroplane, as we'll see in the test flight later, and something which, if you aren't prepared for the spin characteristics, can really get you in a lot of trouble. And indeed there have been quite a lot of spin accidents involving these aeroplanes. The good points of this aeroplane are the visibility is fantastic. It's not quite got a bubble canopy, but it's close to a bubble canopy. You can see a little bit of the framing around the door is all that really blocks your viewpoint when you're sat in the plane, and you'll see that when we load into the simulator. It's also got quite sensitive, quite responsive controls, which teaches good technique and teaches not to over-control the aircraft. It's also got quite a wide cockpit for the size of aircraft, so you can fit in here with even quite a large, two quite large people can fit in here, and assuming you don't take full fuel, you can quite happily share the cockpit comfortably and also have the performance to take off and fly around. And also on the performance front, it is superior to the Cessna 150, 152 in performance, both climb and in cruise. It's a quicker aeroplane. It's got a bit more, it's a bit more of an efficient airframe as well. So although they use the same engine, the PA38 does make quite a lot more out of it. So the PA38 was first produced in 1978. It's got an aerofoil which is designed by NASA, so pretty high tech there. The downside of it is that although the aerofoil was designed by NASA, the aircraft was designed to be as cheap as possible. So the actual structure of the wing is a little bit flimsy, shall we say, which results in some oil canning effects when the skin of the aeroplane flexes during maneuvers like stalls and spins, which is part of the reason why it exhibits quite violent stall characteristics, which we'll see later when we test the aircraft. Part of there was some rectification work done. You can see on the leading edge, or if I go into this view here, I'll be able to show you. So on the leading edge, we've got a couple of stall strips here, which were added after the aircraft was introduced to try to calm the stall characteristics of the aircraft down a little bit. So it's not quite as bad as when it first came out, but part of the reason was the aircraft was designed to have those stall characteristics, and also partially they were made worse by the structure of the wing and the lack of structural strength in the skin of the aircraft. So the Tomahawk was produced until 1982. The last couple of model years, the aircraft was improved a little bit with improved cabin heating and defroster, better trim system, better zinc chromate, protection for the airframe to prevent corrosion, better soundproofing and bigger tyres. And the aircraft that we've got here is one of those late model Tomahawks, because you can see it's got the larger tyres on there, which are basically the same ones as fitted to the PA38, I believe. The Tomahawk, there were only about 2,000, just over 2,000 of these aircraft built, all in the main Piper factory at Vera Beach. Just as a comparison, the Cessna 150, 152, over 7,500 of those were made throughout its lifespan in both the main Cessna factory and also the factory in Rennes in France. So you can see that this really wasn't that much of a commercial success, and the main reason for that is those aforementioned stall and spin characteristics, and also because it's just generally an unpleasant airplane to fly around. I'm sorry, Piper, but that's the truth. It's quite a light handling airplane, and to keep it flying in a straight line, it needs almost constant input on the yoke or rudder pedals or both, and as a result it can be quite tiring to fly long cross countries, and it doesn't really help the popularity of the aircraft, that kind of thing. So that's a little bit about the real thing. What about my history with the airplane? Well, when I first became a flying instructor, this was the airplane both that I did my flying instructor training on and also that I used to train people on for the vast majority of the first sort of 2.5–3 years that I was a flying instructor for. I have more hours on this airplane than any other single type of my logbook. I have almost 800 hours in this airplane. I'm still alive, so there's at least something to say for this airplane. If somebody as ham-fisted as me can avoid dying after 800 hours. I've taught countless people how to fly in this airplane. Many of whom are now flying airliners for a living and all that kind of fancy stuff. So it holds quite a lot of sentimental value for me. So it was quite special, and I was really keen to try to get this from Just Flight to be able to review for you today, because I've got quite a lot of history with this aeroplane. And yeah, thank you for Just Flight for providing this. It has they have provided it as a review copy, but as always, you can assure that I will be 100% honest and not swayed by any biases or feelings towards Just Flight for providing me a free aeroplane. Right, so without further ado, let's have a look at the aircraft itself. So you can see they've done an absolutely fantastic job with the external model. You really wouldn't expect anything less from Just Flight. They make some of the best looking airplanes in the simulator. Some of my favourite airplanes in the simulator, especially the Arrow. That's a really, really lovely plane. You can see that they've done their usual job of weathering the airplane up. You can see the cowlings are kind of bent at the top here. This is typical Tomahawk. They all look like this. They've all got a little bit of a gap up here. Some worse than others. This cowling fits really poorly on some Tomahawks. You can see a bit of smattering of dirt / paint chipped off on the front here. You can see we've got an LED landing light, which is very fancy. None of the Tomahawks I flew had one of those fitted. And you can see all the little bits and pieces here. You can see the tie-down loops under the wing, the stall warner up there, pitot head. See these quite distinctive sort of corrugated almost lines in the flying surfaces. It's quite a typical Piper thing. And the T-tail up here, one of the key features of the Tomahawk. Again, one of the features that wasn't particularly liked, and as far as I can tell, they only did it because it looked cool. The T-tail means that when you're taking off, or you're trying to take off short field or on soft field, you've got no elevator authority until the aircraft's moving at a reasonable speed. Whereas in something like a Cessna 150, because the tailplane is down here, it's in the race of the propeller, so as soon as you add power, you've got airflow over that and you can raise the nose off the ground. So the short field performance of the Tomahawk is actually surprisingly poor, despite it being a very light aeroplane. But that's enough about that. The external model, top score to Just Flight. They've done a fantastic job. Let's have a quick scroll through the liveries. This one is rather fancy, isn't it? Foxtrot registered aircraft, so it's a French reg aircraft, but apparently it belongs to British Airways. A bit smaller than their usual aircraft, but cool little colour scheme. I believe I knew this aeroplane. If it's the one I'm thinking of, it came a cropper in a crash in Wales a few years ago, but it was a really nice looking little plane. Used to be based at Gamston, if it is the one I'm thinking of. You see the British Airways again, and you've got the, I forget the name of this, Flying Colours or whatever it was, the period of BA where they had all of the really cool colour schemes on the tail. I know a lot of the kind of British Airways purists didn't like it, but I was a huge fan of this this era of British Airways. I thought it was very, very cool. I remember being sat at Gatwick Airport as a little kid, just seeing how many different designs I could spot on all the British Airways aircraft. So that's the Tomahawk equivalent of it. Classic Piper colour scheme here on Kilo Hotel. Very smart, simplistic colour scheme with the Piper logo on the tail there. This one is an aeroplane which is very special to me because, without doxing myself too hard, this is one of the aeroplanes I used to fly when I was a flying instructor. Well, still a flying instructor. When I was a PPL instructor, I used to fly one of these, this exact aeroplane. It certainly didn't have an LED landing light when I used to fly it. In fact, it was an absolute shed when I used to fly it. It was the aircraft in the fleet which had the most awful performance. So on hot days, you used to be struggling to climb out. I distinctly remember following our chief flying instructor who was in this thing with a fairly large gentleman, and it was really, really struggling to climb, which was quite amusing and worrying in equal measures. But yeah, very special aeroplane to me. I've got quite a few hours in this thing. Interesting colour scheme here. Kind of a khaki brown, very 70s looking. Jobby. Nice and glossy and shiny though. Tomahawk 2. Very fancy. But yeah, nice. Gotham. It's Batman's aeroplane, clearly. Now this one belongs to a flying school over in Liverpool called Raven Air, and they have some really quite interesting Tomahawk colour schemes. This is one of them, Liver Bird 5, and you've got the famous symbol of the city of Liverpool on the tail, the Liver Bird. Fancy looking RAF style front end there with the stripy prop. Very, very nice. I think they look after their Tomahawks a lot better than our school used to, that's for sure. Another Raven Air aircraft, Blackbird 7. So called because it is black. Cool looking again, stripy RAF style propeller. It's a little bit like the Royal Air Force Hawk livery. And you've got a red, white and blue Liver Bird on the tail. Some little yellow details. Very cool looking colour scheme, this one. November registered aircraft for the US bros. Got the Tomahawk symbol on the tail there. Nice stars and stripes. Nice and smart, quite simplistic. The Blue Angels, of course. Yep, the Blue Angels, famous for flying Tomahawks, of course, the only aircraft with enough performance to pull off the kind of displays that that they do. So yeah, this is a Blue Angels Tomahawk. Another nice, smart November registered colour scheme. Browny grey and red and white. This is very nice and smart with the Piper logo on the tail. Oscar Reg. Don't know if it's Netherlands, maybe, Oscar, not sure. This is quite nice and smart. Grey, 2 shades of grey and white with the classic Piper logo on the front here. Interestingly enough, I think Piper ditched this logo by the time the Tomahawk came out, but there's no stopping you putting it on there. Fly one, don't know if that's a flying school or something, but very nice. Sierra 5 reg, not really sure where that comes from, but it's a cool looking airplane, bright yellow with the checkerboard pattern on the wingtips and the rudder, and a buzzing Hornet in the best spirit of Jordan Racing on the tail there. Victor Hotel reg, I believe this is Australian. Very, very nice colour scheme, this one. Actually really like those red and blue chevrons. You know, I'm always a sucker for red and blue combos, or blue and whites. This is a really nice looking one though. And the last one is just a custom one, a plain one with no reg, so you can put your own reg on if you want to fly around with your own reg plates on the aircraft. Okay, here we are inside the airplane now, so this is something which is very, very familiar to me, the traditional Tomahawk cockpit. They've done an amazing job of this. I think Just Flight do interiors better than any other company that I can think of in Flight Simulator. Bit of a weird graphical effect on that, but other than that, panel looks absolutely incredible, spot on. Really brings back some memories for me. The funny foam pad on the yoke and all this kind of stuff. You can see all the detail on the arms of the yoke here. These are sort of rubbery foam thing in the real aeroplane, and they're prone to spinning round when some students grabbing hold of this and white knuckling it. So that's always a barrel of laughs. We've got a carpet in this aeroplane. That's handy. A lot of the carpets in our planes had come out over the years, either because people had vommed on them or because brake fluid had leaked out the cylinders onto the carpet, so they just pull the carpet out and don't bother refitting it. So we've obviously got a better looked after aeroplane than any of ours, that's for sure. Lovely plastic fake leather seats, which get absolutely burning hot in the summer and burn your back if you're wearing a white shirt. Bunch of chocks in the back here. Probably wouldn't have these back here in the Tomahawk most of the time, because if I was going to go out and spin or stall or anything like that, the last thing I'd want is these things shooting forward and smacking me in the back of the head. You can see we've got these little straps around here, so if you've got anything moderately sized, you could pop it under this strap here. All we used to have in the back was a first aid kit, which I used to make sure was properly strapped down. You can see you've got some strengthening coming down here, almost like a roll cage type structure, which comes up the roof here. Interesting doors on the Tomahawk. It's they kind of make up part of the roof, which kind of reminds me of a Ford GT40 racing car. Probably about the only thing that it has in common with a Ford GT40. But they're quite good doors, and they're very useful in the summer. You can just pop them open and fly around with the door open in the summer. And when you're taxiing around, certainly I always used to bang the door open and get a bit of fresh air in the plane. And you can see they're held together by this little handle at the top here. But yeah, quality of the interior model, absolutely spot on. Very basic, straightforward cockpit, nothing fancy in here. No fancy radio magnetic indicators or anything of that nature. It's just it's a basic light aircraft, training aircraft, and you've just got your basic instruments in here, so you don't distract your students, which is just what you want. Right, so without further ado, let's load into the simulator and crack on with our review flight. Okay, so here we are in the simulator on the ground at Doncaster, Sheffield Airport in the UK, with default weather set, that is 15 degrees, full ISA, 1013 hectopascals pressure, 2992 for you guys in the US. No winds, nothing like that, so we've got a fully controlled conditions in which to test the aeroplane. Just give you a quick spin around the plane in the sim lighting conditions, because I know it can be a little bit different from the hangar. You can see the dirt on the airframe a lot better in the sim lighting. You can see mud going up these strips on the wing here where you walk, which is exactly what every Tomahawk looks like, unless it's incredibly well looked after. Bit of dirt on the belly, all down this airbox intake here, oil cooler intake, which is exactly what you see on Tomahawks, certainly on the ones that I've flown. So fantastic job from Just Flight, as far as I can tell. It's about as good as it gets. On the inside, yeah, looking good in the sim lighting. You see the carpet's a bit dirty. Lovely. Right, okay, so what sort of things do you get? What little extra bits do you get? Well, you get the usual bits and bobs that you can pop on the outside of the plane. You get some tie downs. You've got a tow bar here, which is a lot fancier than the tow bars that we used to use. We just had a little one that used to go in through the top there. There's like a little, that little bar there's got two little holes in it. So we used to have ones that look like the kind of little claws that slot through there. But I digress. So we've got chocks, we've got tie downs, we've got a tow bar, and we've got a pitot cover as well that you can pop on there for some added realism. So let's get those away. You can see all sorts of options on this little iPad EFB thing that you can set the airplane up. Aircraft states, we've got a maintenance system on the airplane, so it will wear out. You can set random conditions, so if you want a worn-out flying club style aeroplane, you can do that. You can overhaul the aircraft to reset everything to 100%, and this controls the rate at which everything wears out. You can see I've got failures and wear and tear turned on, so if anything does go wrong on the review flight, then we'll deal with it as we would in real life. And you can see we've got a bit of hours on here. That's just me flying around testing it. We can have a co-pilot sat in here. with us, although I don't think they load in until you've got the doors closed and everything. Yeah, so we'll see the co-pilot later. Fuel selector, you've got an auto fuel selector. This is similar to what the PA38 and the Arrow have got. The Just Flight aircraft, you can have it automatically flip fuel tanks for you every 20 minutes or so. I don't know exactly what the time interval is, but it's to avoid you having to manage your own fuel tanks, but I think I'm just about capable of doing that myself, so I'm going to have it turned off. Options in the cockpit, so you can see we've got a radio stack here. Way nicer radio stack than any of the Tomahawks that I used to fly, that's for sure. But that's the basic, quote-unquote, basic setup. You can have a dual GPS fit, which is much better than any Tomahawk that I've ever seen. You can have the GNS 530 here. And this is all the working title stuff from Microsoft Flight Simulator, so it's all improved. The good old PMS 50, which is one of my favourite things to use in Flight Simulator. Way too fancy for a Tomahawk though. We'll keep it with the standard setup here. State saving, so this will save what state you've got the panel in at the end of each flight, so when you get back to your plane it's set up how you had it. We can select an OBS for nav 2 there. We'll get rid of it because I don't really know of any Tomahawks that I flew that had that. You can have an ADF fitted, and some of the Tomahawks I flew had this. I think, in fact, Echo Sierra did have it, and it might have been the only one, or one of only a couple that actually had it, so I'm going to leave it in for realism, of course. Quite nice transponder we've got over here. Doors and charts, can bring charts up here, and I'll show you those later. Doors, obviously, but also you can do it from the controls in the cockpit, as of course you would in real life. So there we go. It's got a sort of cheat autopilot, so if you are on a long flight you can set this thing up and it will hold the controls for you. It's just the equivalent of getting your mate to hold the yoke, basically. Of course the Tomahawk does not have an autopilot as standard. So one more thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you the walk around. So if we start here where we would start the walk around, you can see I've already done some of these as I was messing around with it, but just as we would in real life, you can check all the flying surfaces, flaps, and it will tick it once you've checked it there. So you can see everything's okay there. So let's move along to the next part. We've got chocks removed, the tyre, so you can click that, it will tell you the pressure and the condition of the tyre. Stall warner, no, we'd normally do this with the battery on because this is a electric stall warner, so it'll make a honk honk noise if you've got the battery turned on. Tire dams removed. Fuel strain, so if I remember rightly it's there. Oh, water quantity 0%, that's handy. Pitot cover, so we can just click that to get rid of it, I think. Can we? Have to pull it? Maybe not. And gear strut, so yeah, that's checked. I'm not really sure how to get the Pitot cover off rather than going in the cockpit and doing that. I suppose I can just press that and we'll get rid of it. And coming around here, chocks removed, nose tyre is looking good. Prop, can even spin it through a little bit. Looking, I'll make sure the mags are off before you do that. Tail bars remove. Fuel, so you've got the gasculator on the side there, no 0% water. And gear strut. It's just spinning the prop around again, isn't it? Click on everything. There we go. Look. You get the idea. Obviously, we'd also pop the cowling open, check the oil, things like that, but I don't believe Just Flight have included that. Perhaps that's one for the future. We've seen features like that be introduced on things like the 414 and the command sheet, so maybe Just Flight are thinking of doing that with this aeroplane in the future. And you get the idea. It's just to give you the full flying school experience. You can do your full walk around, most of the walk around items anyway, and make sure your aeroplane's in good state before you go flying. So very cool to see. Like that a lot. So without further ado, let's button the doors up and go flying, shall we? Just a quick note as to the state of the aircraft. I've loaded us up. We're at max takeoff weight, about 750 kilos, and that's just for our climb performance checks, because it's all done off an aircraft at maximum takeoff weight. So there we go. That's that done. I don't know if I can get rid of this. Look at this. Top of descent calculator. OFP? My word. Navigraph? Ah! So there's lots of different stuff you can throw in here. You can even... There's a notes page. Which of course you need to use to draw cat faces. Yeah, cool. Didn't even realise it could do that. So a lot of good stuff on the little EFB here. I was just looking for a way to get rid of it, and I think there is. There we go. It's that little switch just there. Gets rid of it. That's good. Right, so let's quit this out. So we've actually got a little checklist included here. Now I could probably start this aeroplane up from memory, but checklist is there for a reason. So let's do it properly. So this is the pre-flight check in the cockpit. We'll assume that all that is that's all good. That's the walk around. Let's go to before starting engine. So cabin doors are closed and latched. Overhead latch is engaged. See the little thing here? See how it pops open there? If it's not correctly engaged. It was a nightmare to get these locks in the right place, by the way. Sometimes you had to sort of stick your finger in and fiddle around with it to get it to start, to get it to engage. Give myself PTSD thinking about it. Seats are adjusted and locked. Seatbelts and harnesses are fastened. Circuit breakers. Let's check the circuit breakers. Now these aren't all operational. Some of them aren't, but some of them are. So these can pop out as part of the failure system. So it's a good idea to check those. Parking brake is set. Carburetor heat is off. Fuel selector. So that's, both tanks are the same. They're both full. So we'll start on the left tank. Okay, so engine starts making. It says prime. That's interesting. Because normally we'd do this first. Get the battery on. Make sure we've got the nav lights on there. We don't want that, so let's get rid of that for now. So that's that. And let's prime it. So got primer over here. Now, every Tomahawk I ever flew needed at least 4 primes to start, so we're going to do the same thing with this. And that's probably leave prime it in the out position. That's interesting. It's quite a strange starting technique. I'm just going to do what I used to do. Throttle open 1/2 inch. Yeah, mouse is on. Electric fuel pump can come on. Sounds spot on, by the way. Mixture full rich. And then we're going to start it. So clear around, clear prop, all that good stuff. Okay. Got oil pressure. It's coming up. Starter warning light is out. RPM 1200. Okay, that's all done. Electric fuel pump can come off now, and fuel pressure is good. Primer's locked. Engine starts warm up. 800 to 1200 RPM. Got 1200. Let's pop the radios on. 2 radios, what a privilege. Let's stand by on this. ADF. Can't remember what the Zoncast ADF NTP frequency is. You get the idea. That thing points at it. Okay, 7000 got the flight ID there, the reg of the aircraft. It's pretty straightforward. Taxi area clear, brakes check, steering check. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We're good to go. Call ATC. Release parking brake. Get that off. Away we go. So sounds are very good, as you might expect from Just Flight. They're good at making a good sound model. Little bit disappointing that they haven't included a function to put a headset on, like you get in quite a few aeroplanes now. But it's not the end of the world. Tomahawk in real life, it's a very, very easy aeroplane to taxi. It's got a really good turning circle. It's very light on the pedals. And this aeroplane's pretty much the same, so nothing of note as far as the taxi characteristics are concerned. It's just what you'd expect, really. Okay, you can see just how tight you can turn the airplane when you want to, which is just how a Tomahawk is in real life. Set the parking brake, RPM 1200s. And ready for our power checks. So brake set, check clear behind, and you've got this fantastic rear window. Visibility is really one of the strong points of the Tomahawk, so you can see out the back very, very clearly. Clear behind, and let's just check the temps. Okay, so let's go up to 1800 RPM. Okay, and let's check the mags. So max drop of 175, that's about just over 100. And same story on the right mag, that's about fine, back to boat. Vacuum should be 5 inches, so see at the top here, bang on 5 inches. Oil temperature is good. Oil pressure at the upper end there, which is normal. Carb heat should be about 100 RPM drop, which it is. Shows it's working. We'll leave it on for a second just in case, but the Tomahawk's not really prone to carb icing, certainly not in these sorts of conditions. And throttle, check the ground idle. Yeah, again, sounds really good when you do that. Something to add maybe would be the airplane kind of shaking around a little bit. They do tend to get quite shaky. Any aircraft that's got a two-bladed prop gets a little bit lumpy at ground idle, but the Tomahawk certainly just because it's so light. So that's good, and yeah, mags are set to both. Before takeoff master switch is on, flight instruments are checked, DI's aligned. Fuel selector, in fact, we should really have done that before the power check. So this checklist is a little bit backwards from what I would normally do. I'd normally flip that before the power check just to make sure both tanks were feeding properly, but we will change tanks for departure. Mixtures full rich, electric fuel pumps comes on, carburetor heats off, engine gauges all in the green, pretty much they should be. Static source is normal, that's underneath here. Seats is latched in place, seat backs erect, belts and harnesses fastened, empty seat belt, yeah, okay. Screw it, I don't know if you can, can't do anything with that. Flaps don't need for departure, trim is set, so make sure that trim's in neutral position, which it is for takeoff. Controls full and free, so let's do the usual. Left hand down, left side up, other side opposite. Right hand down, right side up, other side opposite. And we can see full aft, full forward, and we tested the rudder on the taxi, so we've got full and free all the way around. Doors closed and latched, and overhead latch is engaged. That's before takeoff. Checklist complete. Pop that away for the flight. We are good to go. Just the lineup checks to come. Okay, so approach paths clear, transponders coming on out reporting. It's ground mode, so it should go into out reporting when we get airborne. Piso and all the lights. Okay, just a quick note on performance. In this configuration of the aeroplane and in these conditions, we should be getting about 700, 750 feet per minute rate of climb. if it's performing to book figures. So let's see if it does. Right, big power up, TCP is good, off the brakes, full power. Stonking performance as always. Bit of right pedal to keep the aircraft on the centre line. And 60 knots, very, very light in pitch, which is exactly what you expect from a Tomahawk. And then pitch and trim for 70 knots for the climb. Quite a lot of right rudder, which is accurate. So you have to hammer a bit of right pedal in to keep the airplane flying straight in a climb at 70 knots, and we're getting pretty much bang on 750, 800 feet per minute. That's well within the window of variance for an accurate rate of climb on these aeroplanes. Going up and down a little bit as I'm messing around with the pitch of the aircraft slightly, but certainly that's about as good as you can expect, really. And like I said, quite good climb performance out of one of these aeroplanes. It's certainly got better than a Cessna 150. On the sprightly side, but maybe it's a well looked after Tomahawk. I certainly used to fly around in one which had a very good engine in it, which used to cruise at over 100 knots. Needless to say, it was everybody's favourite aeroplane. Yeah, settle down a little bit. You see, I'm really struggling with the pitch to get this thing trimmed out. That's typical Tomahawk. They're so hard to get them flying in a nice, stable, straight latitude. Pitch is perfect. I'd say the roll is maybe, you see me wiggling the yoke about there, the roll is a little bit sluggish, I would say. The real Tomahawk is just as sensitive in roll as it is in pitch. This one, yeah, maybe a little bit lacking, although, I mean, we are heavy, so I guess that accounts for some of it, but it's, in my eyes, a little bit too sluggish to roll. Now, I could mess around with my settings on my honeycomb to amend that, but I thought I would do the review flight with just default settings, no sensitivity curves adjusted or anything like that, just to give you a full impression of what it's like without any kind of messing around on my part with the control dynamics. So I'd say they've got the pitch spot on, the rudder spot on, but the roll a little too sluggish in my opinion. So cruise performance I'd say is, yeah, pretty much spot on, just over 90 knots. It's exactly what we'd expect in one of these aeroplanes, as long as it's well looked after and it's not too hot a day. So the first manoeuvre we're going to get into for our general handling segment is going to be a steep turn, as it usually is, so we'll have a good look around. And we'll do our first one, we'll go for a 45-degree angle bank, so it's about there on the back angle indicator. So, let's pop the fuel pump on, landing lights on for a bit of continuity. And let's go in, so back, balance, and back pressure. And bunch of power. It's quite a hard manoeuvre in a Tomahawk to do this So yeah, quite happy with that. Now what I used to find in real life is that it was actually easier to do steep turns at 60 degrees angle of bank, which is this line just there. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to try a 60 degree angle of bank steep turn. So let's get the speed to recover first. Okay, and quick look out, and bank, balance, back pressure, and full power for this one. Touching the stall warner a little bit. You see how quickly the aeroplane really whips around. I'm doing a better job of holding altitude at 60 degrees. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, the old muscle memory still works, I guess. It is easier to do a 60 degree angle of bank turn than a 45 degrees from this aeroplane, just as it is in the real one, in my opinion. So that's good. It's a good job, just fine. Certainly in terms of pitch amplitude and all that kind of good stuff, spot on for the real aeroplane. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate a stall, and then we're going to have a go at a spin. But I want you to note the stall characteristics of the aeroplane and just see what it does when it stalls. Now, we are heavy today, which is going to dampen the stall characteristics a little bit. When you're light, it's generally more vicious. But I'm still expecting quite a big wing drop. So let's do our checks before stalling manoeuvres. So height sufficient to be recovered by 2,500 feet. Airframe's clean. Safety and security are all strapped in, the doors are closed. Engine T's and P's are good. Fuel pumps on. I'm going to flip the tank now. Right, let's get the flight timer up here. We'll fly for about 8 minutes. So we'll changing in another 8 minutes. Locations, go back to airfields, built up areas, controlled airspace and danger zones, although we do have a bit of a built up area there, so we'll turn away this way to do our clearing turn. And obviously we've got no traffic in flight simulator, so there's no reason for me to doing a clearing turn, but this is just what we'll be doing in real life before we continue to this manoeuvre. Okay, and as soon as we complete the turn, we go straight into the manoeuvre. I'm going to get rid of the yoke, give it a blast, a car beat, but just a blast, because we don't want it on for the recovery. A little bit of nose up trim just to help, but not too much, otherwise it's going to make the recovery more difficult. And now what I'm expecting to happen here is a lot of buffet, stall warner, and then it's going to drop a wing, left wing most probably. Stall warner. Yeah, there she goes. So straight away, forward pressure, full power, then get your wings level, and then climb out of that situation. So that is pretty much spot on Tomahawk stall characteristics. It will do that pretty much every time, depending on the weight of the aeroplane. If you're very heavy, sometimes it will do a more benign stall. But yeah, usually left wing will go down, and you'll get into that exact situation. So just like clearly done their research when it comes to the stall characteristics of this aircraft. Let's try another one with the flaps down. So let's get the speed under control of it. 89 knots is flat limiting speed, so let's just get below that. Flaps one. And you can hear that oil canning of the wing as you get the flaps down, which is really, really good. And flaps again, and let's just go straight into the manoeuvre. Bit of carby. Back up again. I'm expecting the aircraft to stall at a much lower nose attitude, but much lower airspeed. Okay. Yeah, there she goes. You can see it's a bit more benign with the flaps out. So let's recover. Characteristics pretty much spot on, and now I'm going to take us up to about 6,000 feet for the spin, so I don't know, give me 10 minutes.
2 hours later.
Okay, so here we are finally at 6,000 feet. So I'm going to describe what I'm going to do and what's going to happen before we go into it and do it, because as everything's happening, so we're going to go past a bit of a blur, probably going to be the right. So a spin to the right is generally less violent than a spin to the left because the aerodynamics of the aircraft work that way around. I'm going to let the spin develop, so we'll go around 2 or 3 times and then I'm going to initiate the spin recovery. And the spin recovery is to push forward full pressure on the yoke and oppose the direction of spin with the rudder, and initially that's going to be full left rudder for us because we're going to be in a right spin. Now you should be aiming to hit the stops on the yoke, the forward stop on the yoke and the full stop on the rudder at about the same time. That's the correct technique to use in the Tomahawk, and you hold it until the aircraft stops spinning. Now what I'm expecting to see is when the aircraft exits the spin, it will be pretty much in a vertical nose down attitude, at which point it will be very, very important to gently recover the aircraft before we exceed critical airspeed, VNE, which in our case is I believe about 138 knots. You'll be interested to know the majority of accidents that happen with Tomahawks in terms of spins happen not during the spin or because people can't recover from the spin, it's during the recovery phase. So it's very important to centralise the controls and very, very gently recover from that nose down attitude, because that's really the thing that killed the majority of people who unfortunately died as a result of spinning accidents in Tomahawks. So without further ado, say your prayers, feed your rosary through your fingers, and let's go for it. So, exactly the same story as before, we'll give it a tiny bit of carb heat. Just pitching to maintain altitude at the moment, keeping the nose straight with a little bit of left rudder. Here, the stall starting to develop, there's the Warner. Okay, I'm going to go full rudder. See, it's tried to go to the left there. I'm going to try and force it to go right. There we go. And we'll let it develop. 1, 2, 3. Recover. Full forward, full opposite rudder. Pray to the gods. There we go, we're out. Full nose down attitude. You can see the airspeed rapidly increasing. I'm going to very gently raise the nose, try and hold my nerve. Reset the climb to get the airspeed back to normal. Full power. There you go, and that is the quote-unquote less violent spin to the right. So, we're still alive. You can see in that small space of time we've dropped 2,000 feet, so you're descending very, very, very quickly. In the real aeroplane you'd probably have the gyros flip over on both of these, so this thing would probably be upside down. That would be massively out of alignment. It's actually doing quite a good job of staying in alignment here. But as far as the dynamics of the aeroplane concerned, that is a pretty spot-on Tomahawk spin. You can see how the aeroplane was trying to go to the left, because it always wants to go left because of the aerodynamics. So I had to sort of force it over to the right instead. Could have been a little bit earlier on the rudder maybe to prevent that from happening, but oh well, you live, you learn. This time we're going to climb back up to 6,000 feet and we are going to let it spin to the left and see if we can survive that one. Okay, and we are back at 6,000 feet, so hold on to your hats, let's go for it again. So, idle throttle, bit of carb heat. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but this time instead of hitting right pedal, I'm going to hit left pedal. Spin recovery technique is exactly the same, but the spin is likely to be more violent, faster and harder to recover from. You can see last time it took us about a spin and a half, 2 turns, so 1.5, 2 turns to get it to recover. So let's see how many turns it takes to come out of the spin this time. Probably going to have some real fun with this one. There's the stall Warner. There she goes. Pull back on the yoke. Full left pedal. We're into the spin. 1, 2, and 3 turns. Recover. Pull forward. Full opposite rudder. Let's see that. That's 2 turns. And we're out. 2 turns now. About the same as with the spin to the right. So as bad as I was quite expecting. You could see the airplane was going around very, very quickly, really whipping around with the spin to the left. And there you have it. 2 spins in a Tomahawk successfully survived. Now, I did that manoeuvre in real life, I don't know how many times, just using my little party trick to scare the pants off the students. I used to be like, oh no, do you want to have a go at a spin? And they used to very innocently say, yeah, sure, not knowing what kind of manoeuvre it was at all. And then I used to take them up to 6,000 feet and show them that. And most of them would say, I never want to do that again. Some of them who are a little bit mentally unwell, like me, enjoyed it a lot. And to be honest, I used to enjoy that a lot myself. It was probably my favourite thing to do in this aeroplane, because everything else you can do in this aeroplane is a little bit boring after a while. My boss actually used his party trick in this aeroplane was steering the aeroplane around the circuit without using the flying controls at all, just opening the doors and using the doors as differential air brakes. So, you know, we all found our fun in one way or another. So, what features do we have in this aeroplane to show you? Well, nothing, really. It's such a basic aeroplane. There's nothing I can really show you. There's no navigational kit on the aircraft. I'm just navigating VFR here just from landmarks. I know that's I forget the name of the village, but there's a village over there that I know the name of. Got Beverly just ahead of us. We've got the Water Sports Centre and Nottingham Airfield and stuff there. So, I mean, I suppose we could try the. Might be able to pick the Echo Mike Echo up, which is the NDV at East Midlands. So pop 353 in there. Maybe we'll pick that up. Maybe no. Wishful thinking. Never mind. We've been flying for 26 minutes on this fuel tank, so we should definitely change that service point. Pop the fuel off and the landing light on. And I guess I'll see you at the top of the descent. Okay, you can see the RAF Silverstone over there and the 2 lakes just on the edge of their ATZ, so it's probably a good time to start descending to the Water Sports Centre just a little bit here. So let's put some carbons on. Bring power back, and maybe for about 450, 500 minute rate descent. If you ever want a really basic, really easy way to plan your descents, just 3 times your required height loss in terms of distance, and then 5 times your ground speed for your target rate of descent. Works just as well in one of these little things as in the Boeing 737, which is the aeroplane that I fly for a day job, alongside obviously doing a little bit of flying instruction still as well. The speed drops a bit, so I'm going to have to feed a bit more power in. I'll do a pre-joining check, so fuel pump on, fuel can stay where it is for now. Radios are fine, mixtures for rich, altimeter, check that, VNH set. And the DI is behaving itself as far as I can tell. We've got 2 zeros on that, and okay, 170 maybe, so it just need a bit of a adjustment maybe. All that spinning finally did something to it. So a quick note about the circuit detail before we get into it. We're going to do a normal standard circuit with a full flap touch and go, followed by a flapless touch and go, followed by our usual little party trick, which is a glide approach to land. The exact circuit detail you would get on your PL skills test in the UK. Okay, we're just coming into the circuit now, so I'm going to level us off at 950 feet or so on the QNH. Get rid of carbines. And we'll fly straight ahead towards the Tolkien village there on our cross inlet for runway 27. keep an eye on those pesky other aeroplanes in the circuit. Okay, let's do our pre-landing checks. The brakes pressurised, the carriage is fixed, mixture's full rich, mags are on both, fuel's on sufficient to balance, flaps are on, instruments are all green, carb heat come on, hatches and harnesses all secure, landing light is on, or it's coming on. Very importantly, you monitor your speed in the Tomahawk very closely, certainly on base to final. The last thing you want to be doing is getting too slow or trying to crank the aeroplane round too tight because you've left the turn a bit too late or something like that. Speed a bit low, 89 non-stop. Because obviously that's the kind of thing that's going to get you into a critical situation as far as stalling is concerned, and that's how you cirrus yourself into the ground in a spectacular manner. So I'm going to take quite a gentle base to final turn here, still carrying quite a lot of speed as we come around the corner after the select full flat. 70 knots, final approach speed's quite fast for such a small aeroplane, but again it's because of the stall characteristics of the plane. You want to make sure there's a really good margin above the stall. Just coming over the tarmac, and we'll get rid of the power now completely, and hopefully at some point we'll touch down. There we go. Flaps up and pull back. Should have got rid of that at 300 feet, never mind. She pretty much threw herself off the runway there, about 55 knots, not ideal. Allow her to accelerate. The twitchiness of the aeroplane, it can be quite tricky to hold it on a stable flight path. That's really the main challenge. Brakes pressurised, don't carry space mixtures, full rich mags on both. Fuel, we're still in balance. It's not needed. Instruments on green, carbines on, hatches and arms secure, landing lights on. We're all good. Now we could extend around the back of the village here, but hey, I like to live dangerously, so we'll try and keep the circuit just as tight as we had it with the flap. And to do that, we're going to be reasonably aggressive with the throttle. Tomahawk's not an overly slippery aeroplane, still a reasonable amount of drag, so shouldn't have too much trouble getting her down and slowing her down. Close on that speed again. We don't want to be getting too slow, especially with no flap in. Obviously stall speed is higher without the flaps. And corner about 80 knots is good for the base of final turn, especially when we've got no flap in. And we want to be about 75 knots for the, remember that this time, for the final approach speed, and I'm just basically gliding her in at this point. 75 knots in the glide. On the centre line, this is looking reasonably good. Just have to be gentle on the yoke as we come into the flare, because we don't want to be going back up again. There we go, that's better. Pull that. 60 knots, rotate. Probably the biggest challenge with the Tomahawk on takeoffs and landings is strong gusts, just because of how light the aeroplane is, so it's very easy to get smacked around all over the place by the winds. Being a young, inexperienced flying instructor who was desperate for money, I used to fly this aeroplane in some weather conditions where, shall we say, a older and wiser flying instructor may have stayed on the ground, and yeah, it's pretty rough, but the good thing about the Tomahawk is it's got enough control authority to deal with that sort of thing, so wouldn't recommend it in real life, but the aircraft's more than capable of handling it. Approach, so we said brakes, pressurised undercarriage, fixed mixture, full rich, mags on both, fuel, all on, position to balance flaps. We're going to change tanks, flaps don't need. Car peak not yet, hatch kind of secure, lights on, and okay, glide approach, let's go. So, a simulated engine failure on the end of the downwind leg, we'll pitch for the glide at 70 knots. Let's get the car peak on. Keeping it very tight here. That's looking decent, let's go flaps 1. See, I'm constantly looking at the threshold to judge the height remaining. That's looking okay, let's go flaps 2. Can't come away in case of a go around, start turning for the numbers. She comes down pretty steep with 2 stages of flaps in, but it's not anywhere near as bad as the Arrow, for example, which is really dramatic when you get all the drag in. Get a bit of trim in to help with the flare. Okay, that'll do. One Tomahawk review test flight successfully survived. Okay, pocket brake sets, RPM 1200, and transponder to automatically on ground mode, and hands to transponder, fuel pump come off, landing light come off, and anti-coils can come off, and to heat, so all of those off, car peaks off. And we are good to go, let's go park her up. Okay, there we go. So let's get all the radios off, so that can go off, that's off, that's off. Quick check the mags. idle throttle, idle mixture. Get the door open. Battery off, mags off. Job done. Okay, and finally, it's conclusion time. Do I think this aeroplane is worth the price? And it is currently about 30 Great British pounds, which equates to I don't know how many dollars. I'll put it on the screen now for all the US bros. So do I think it's worth it? Well, let's look at the positives and negatives. So positives, the visual model of that guy's shoes is really good, actually. Look at that. But the visual model of the aeroplane is brilliant. Really, really, really good. Nicely weathered. It looks perfect in terms of the proportions and everything. It's a Tomahawk, 100%. It looks like you just lifted one out of real life. The interior model is just as good, if not better. Just Flight, I think, probably make the best interiors in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I don't know of anyone who does it as well as they do, and this is no exception. It's absolutely spot on, perfect looking interior model here. The sounds are about as Tomahawky as you could possibly want. I hope I did a good job of showcasing them during the flight. The only downside is, like I said, I would put a headphone simulation in there on a click spot, maybe where the mic and the phone's jack is over here, so that when you want to be cruising along for any length of time, you can kind of take your head outside of the loud aeroplane noises zone a little bit. Of course, there's a Microsoft Flight Simulator function. You can turn it on in the sound options, and it will do it for you there. But it's just a nice little bit of immersion to have something like that. The next thing is aircraft systems. Pretty much everything that's on the Tomahawk is modelled, even down to the cold air vents over here. It's really, really in-depth. Although, that said, there's not that much to model on a Tomahawk because it's such a simple aeroplane. You can see all the circuit breakers are there. You've got the wear and tear system. You've got that fantastic iPad thing here that's got loads and loads of different features on it, more than even I realised it had. And you can see that you've got all these different options on the aircraft for maintenance and for wear and tear and random failures. You've got the walk-around function. You've got all the little tow bars and all that kind of stuff. So it's got all the extra stuff that you would come to expect from a Just Flight aircraft. Anything like the arrows, either of the arrows or the PA38, have all got this kind of stuff. And it's here, present and correct on the Tomahawk. So well done, Just Flight. Good stuff with that. Next thing, performance. It hits all the book figures. I would not expect anything less from Just Flight, who are, of course, one of, if not the best developer of light aircraft for Microsoft Flight Simulator. They were getting book figures right with their very first aeroplane in the sim, where everybody else was still sort of all over the place. So I'd be very, very surprised if the performance figures weren't correct. Flight dynamics are, for the most part, very good, but I've got a little bit of a negative that I'll talk about later. The stall and spin characteristics are really, really good. Very, very Tomahawk-y, for want of a better descriptor. If you want the real Tomahawk experience, if you want to experience what it's like getting into and getting out of a spin in one of these airplanes without having to put your life at significant peril, this is the way to do it, I think, rather than going off and trying to talk a flying instructor into spinning one for real for you. This is really, really cool to see. And obviously, as somebody who's had a significant amount of time in this airplane in real life, real nostalgia hit just seeing how the airplane flies. Okay, so now it's time for a few negatives. So, first of all, I said there's a little niggle with the flight dynamics. This is a personal thing, and maybe, you know, I've not flown a Tomahawk in three, maybe 4 years. So it's been quite a while since I last sat in one of these airplanes. But from what I remember, the roll sensitivity is was much greater than what we've got in the sim right now. And like I said, I could have gone in, messed around with my yoke settings in the sensitivity curves, and made it so it feels much more how I would remember the aeroplane. But I wanted to sort of leave everything neutral, everything default, so you could see how the airplane's set up as standard. And honestly, it just feels a little bit too stable in roll. It's certainly got that annoying pitch sensitivity that the real airplane has, but it doesn't quite have the roll as well. And honestly, when you're flying around with a circuit and things like that, the sensitivity becomes less of a disadvantage and more of an advantage, and it becomes quite a nice airplane to kind of handle around in the circuit. And you don't really feel that as much in this airplane as you did in the real one. So something to work on for Just Flight in the future there. Next thing I'm going to say is the price. It's about the same price as the PA38, a little bit cheaper than the Arrows, but not by much. And it's certainly more expensive than some other aircraft, for example, the Cowes DA42, which, as you know from my review, if you've seen it, I'm a huge fan of that aeroplane. In terms of flight dynamics, it's probably the best light aircraft in the simulator. It's got plenty of systems on it. It looks fantastic. And it's about £5 cheaper than this thing is. And it's got way more systems modelling. And the DA42 is just, it's not Just Flight's fault. It's not like they've missed any systems out. It's just the fact that the Tomahawk is such a very incredibly basic aeroplane. Honestly, I think even the PA28, the Just Flight PA28, you'd get more out of, because it's just a faster aeroplane that you can do longer sort of cruising trips in, which is going to limit the Tomahawk, I think, for people who just want a light GA aircraft to cruise around in the simulator. The Tomahawk isn't really the one for that. It's got no autopilot, apart from the little cheat autopilot over here, which obviously is going to reduce your realism if you resort to using that. It's not a particularly pleasant aeroplane to cruise around in because of how sensitive the controls are and how easily deflected it is from a stable flight path. And that's exactly what the real one is like, and that's exactly why people don't really like the real one. So, unfortunately, I think for the price of what it is, it's a little bit on the expensive side. And this is completely not Just Flight's fault, but because the Tomahawk's a little bit of an unpleasant aeroplane in real life, because this is such a good representation of the real Tomahawk, it's a bit of a pain to fly around in the simulator. Now, for me personally, that makes absolutely no difference, because it's the nostalgia hit that gets me with this aeroplane. And I would have bought this thing if it had been £50, because it just means so much to me to see this thing, especially an aeroplane which I've flown a load in real life, the exact aeroplane that I've flown a load in real life, flying it around Nottingham. For me, that's peak Microsoft Flight Simulator. That's exactly why I love this game so much. But I realise for a lot of you guys out there, you aren't going to have that emotional connection to this airplane. Maybe you haven't flown one in real life and it's just another light GA single-engine airplane to you, in which case you're probably going to pick the PA28, or you're going to pick the Arrow, something with a retractable gear, constant speed prop with a higher cruising speed that you can do longer trips in without it taking so long, and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I 100% agree with you in that case. So I think, honestly, Just Flight could have maybe priced it down a little bit versus some of their other products, just to make it a little bit more attractive. But really, that's it. That's the only niggle I've got. For the most part, very happy with this aeroplane. It's a lot of fun to me personally. I'm sure if you buy it, you'll have fun with it. Maybe not if you go on a long cross country, you'll get a little bit tired of it by the end. But that's just the Tomahawk for you. So yeah, overall, I think it's great. It's maybe not quite worth that money for the majority of people. For me, it is, though. So that's my slightly confusing conclusion. Anyway, I'm sure you've got a different opinion, and if you have, please stick it down in the comments below. I love to read the comments, and I respond to all of them. If you enjoyed the video, and if you watched it all the way through to the end, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, all of that YouTube stuff. It really does help the channel grow. All three of us who work on the channel, because there are three of us behind the scenes, we've all got airline jobs now, so we're all quite kind of busy with that behind the scenes, but hopefully we're going to be doing some live streams in the future, and it's going to involve me and Jimbo flying the 737 multi-pilot in the same sort of way that we did in our very first videos on this channel in the Dash 8. So hopefully I'll see a few of you around for that, and if not, I'll see you in the next review video. Take care, goodbye.